two, three. One, two, three. Let's go.
Welcome everybody to a special edition on a Wednesday. This is AZcrypto with my partner right here, MrFOMO. MrFOMO had a nice day yesterday. In fact, this morning we were above 939 again, but back down again. The market's been struggling. However, with all the things that have been going on around the world, it's very easy to see why we would have such volatility. And we're kind of here today to not just talk about one coin. Well, we will talk about a couple projects we think, despite the market not doing well, are doing amazing things for the long term that we want to talk about. And we talked about these projects before, but they're worth talking about. But we kind of wanted to do a positive show because a lot of people are down because we've had now November, December, January, February. We're now going on 4 months of downward action. We never got our alt season. And if you don't know, an alt season is when alts go parabolic at the end after BTC has a top off. There was no BTC top off. There was no alt season. Some people still believe this is an extended cycle, and that's happening in 2022. Some people believe that BTC will never see 50K in 2022. I personally don't believe that. But we're trying to do a positive show today because I think it's important for people not to give up, because we've heard stories in our own personal life of people that have been really down and just want to mail it in.
Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing is there, everybody should be making their money work for them. And there are a lot of people that just don't have the stomach for it. And for those people, I would encourage them to go into, like you were talking today, when we had our morning meeting, you were talking about putting money in USDC and just letting that sit for a month and seeing what kind of return you can get on an exchange like Voyager. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are down on crypto right now. And it's funny because, everything goes through this progression into digitization. They said the same things about the internet, and they said the same things about every technology that sort of came along, that it's going to ruin everything, or it's never going to work, and they've always been proven wrong time and again. And this is the next logical step for money, is to go digital. And so if you're here, even if you're down, you're still in the top 3% in the world of people, of investors, of people who are interested in this technology. And so it's akin to the people who were getting into the internet in 1995, 96. And so you're still ahead of the game. It doesn't feel like it when your portfolio's down. And I'm sort of giggling because we've been through this several times just in the last year, is sort of these huge pitfalls where we learn about DCA and we learn what's a real project.
Taking profits.
And yeah, and you sort of hone in on these really great projects. And there's always this learning process and this learning curve that gets shorter and shorter every time, where you start to understand, the market swings, and you start to understand how the macro, the world affects the market, and how the crypto market is still tied to the other markets. And so every time we have this discomfort in the market, it's really this great learning opportunity, because that's where growth comes from, is that discomfort. These are the growing pains. This is the price of admission. It's that volatility in the market. So yeah, it doesn't feel great. You're going to have that sick feeling in your stomach, but just hang in there. And in a few months, this could likely turn around and you could be way up. And feeling is a lot better. And there's an old quote that sort of I won't go into the quote, but you kind of, you don't understand bad unless you understand good. These are two things that are sort of only understood when you understand the other one. So you're experiencing the bad now, you'll really appreciate the good when it comes around, and it's going to come around. Like we always say, if the dip is here, then the next pump is near. And so you just have to
I
hang
should
on.
remind people there was not that long time ago where 9K BTC got people excited. Now, right tonight, we're slightly below 37K, and people think the world is coming to an end. And I want people to think about this. We've got a war that's about to happen that seems imminent in Europe. We've got interest rates that are about to go up. We have unsettling markets, and it's taking that to hold BTC below 40K, and everyone is bearish. I understand being bearish over the short term, a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. But over the next few years, with a halving coming in less than 2 years, in fact, a year and a half, I just don't get the negativity. And you know, a lot of us, including myself, who may have bought back in a little too early in January. But um, the getting BTC under 40K for several months, I we go back to our BTC show and what we think is going to happen over the next 4 to 8 years. I still think is an amazing opportunity. So even if you're just dropping in $20, not financial advice, every week into BTC, I
Or
still
BTS
think
or US.
over the long term, yeah, over the long term, you're going to be really happy about that. Um, I just think 100K BTC is inevitable in the next 3 years. I really believe that. I don't want, I mean, my predictions are actually much higher than that by 2025, but I really think that we're going to see more and more adoption. I mean, I didn't mention this on the show, but one of the people that lives on my street who might be watching the show, um, his company is now selling NFTs for doors on Metaverse.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. You were telling me about that. That was cool.
so, and that's someone that was not in crypto at all a few months ago. So, whether BTC is under 40 or not, adoption is happening. We talked
That's
about the
wild to
Cleveland
me.
Cavaliers.
That door idea is such a forward thinking idea, especially for a company that's, you know, into construction and sort of on the other side of
Mhm.
technology, you would think. But for them to be in NFTs and to create an avenue for revenue that way is genius. And I
Yeah.
can only imagine that there will be other companies in that space that will start to follow their lead.
What about the two homes sold here in the Tampa area as NFTs? No one would have
Right.
seen that coming 24 months ago. So I just think we're headed that way. If you go back and look at history, people said cable TV would never work. Then they said the internet would never work.
TV
Now they're saying digital currency will never work. And it's going to work. I mean, people said electric cars. No one's going to want to drive an electric car. How many of us would love to have an electric car right now with gas prices going up? I mean, this is the future, and you can delay it all you want. And you know, as an example, I don't want to go too much into education, but there are certain people that don't want to use technology, and that's fine. But eventually, you are going to look like a dinosaur,
And
and
eventually
that's just the reality.
eventually you're going to hamstring your students and your ability as a teacher, but we're getting far off.
But the same thing. People that are refusing to look at. I understand. There are coins. Obviously, we've talked about before. Once you get out of the top 200, there are some very dangerous coins. But you know, people, if you know someone that's not into crypto, have them watch our show on USDC. I mean, 9% for free, tax free. It's just something to think about. Have them watch our show in BTC long term. If you put money in BTC over the last 8 years, you have really done well. And
Especially
I
this
just
close to what we think is the floor. I mean,
mhm.
for you and I, and for a lot of people out there, especially some of those TA experts that we follow, you know, somewhere between 29 and 32 is generally the consensus on what the floor
Mhm.
is now for
Mhm.
BTC, barring some horrible world event, you know, worse than what we've seen in the last week. Um, but uh, I just I think that if you're not at least willing to, as someone who's an investor already, if you're not going out there and you're not communicating to other people that this is kind of the future and this is the way, and not being positive about it, then I think we're missing it. If we're taking the attitude that, you know, I'm gonna be rich and then I'll show everybody else, then that's sort of not the attitude. This isn't going to go forward unless we all kind of band together and you know, make it go forward. And that happens a lot faster if we kind of, you know, accept that everyone can be a part of this, and it doesn't have to be just a very few. It's very democratic and very open in that way.
And I want to talk about something positive. Luna, as soon as we started taping, went up 2.3%. It's back above 59 again, just like that. And the last few days, Luna's done amazing. We earlier in the week, Luna, we hit 47.27. We got all the way up to 60, almost 65. We almost hit today. We're at 59 right now. But something amazing happened in Luna. And a lot of you are probably not familiar with the story. And these are the type of stories we really want to hit you guys with. A bunch of whales bought into Luna. And not only did they buy in, they agreed to stake their Luna for the next 4 years. Over a billion Luna staked, and the average price, listen to this, 51.35, Mr. FOMO. 51.35. That means over the next 4 years, likelihood at some point, with Luna burning and now being under 800 million and burning every day, that means at some point in the next year or so, the floor for Luna is likely to be somewhere around 51, which we're talking about something that was 5. It has the best tokenomics, and I am, you know, let's put all the cards on the table. I'm a Luna holder. I'm not, and that's one of the ones I'm not upset that I went in on back in on January. I wrote it up this summer. Didn't quite sell at the top, but I still made a nice chunk of change. I showed you my Luna wallet.
We love the moon coin on this channel, you know.
But what were you shocked? What was your reaction when you saw 19,475 51 Luna, over $1 billion were sold, and this is going to be locked. 24 whales is going to be locked at an average price at 51.35 during a down period. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
To me, it's just another example. Like, let's say you don't trust yourself with investing. Let's say you don't trust me and AZ with investing. But people with money don't lock up their money in investments
4 years.
for 4 years for nothing. They have huge faith in this project.
That's a great point.
I mean, we've covered this on the show several times. The tokenomics are brilliant. Mm-hmm. It seems to be a crypto that is geared towards its investors and giving its investors returns. And I know they have so much more going on that's not really what they're after, but the tokenomics and what they're doing, it's just it gives so much back to its investors that it's insane. But to me, it just said, I made the right decision. You know what I mean? I wasn't shocked to see it, but when I saw it, it was like this huge sigh of relief, especially in a down week, you know, when your portfolio's sweating it out a little bit and you see the smart money going in that hard at that price, and then saying, not only did we go in that hard at that price, but we're also locking it up for 4 years. It's like, oh, thank God, I made the right decision.
And let's make it clear to our viewers, they're not locking that in for a 2x to double their money. They're looking much higher than that. I just had a plane go over me as I'm outside here in Florida. And that's what I feel about Luna. I really think this might, next cycle, what are the top 4 projects if I had to predict? I know we didn't talk about this earlier. I'll say BTC, I'll say ETH, I'll say Luna, and either AVAX and Solana are your top 4. That's how
I definitely think Luna is up there. And if I'd be shocked if it doesn't one day make itself the top 3. to be that third coin right there behind Ethereum, and I think I've heard people even say that that would be the coin to flip Ethereum someday. And I think if there were to be one, then probably that would be the.
I I I would hope projects in the future look at Luna's tokenomics and really follow, because they're really putting the customer first, unlike other projects where we've had founders come out, and I hate to pick on Charles from Cardano. I don't care about the price. Well, someone that bought your product at 2 or 250, or God forbid at 3, and it's been 6 to 8 months, they care about the price. Now, yes, they should wait, and they shouldn't panic sell, but you should have some type of, they bought into your product, and you saying you don't care, that to me rubs me the wrong way. I
At
just I
least
don't
at least sympathy or empathy. But to me, it's just so wild that there aren't more projects that are looking at Luna and going, we need to model our project after that. Isn't that
Mhm.
such a wild concept to you, that their ideas are so good, but yet they're not being copied or emulated in any way in reality across the board? Maybe there's some projects that are starting up that are going to get to that point, but it's not something that we see in those major
We've
projects.
seen some, yeah, we've seen some meme coins with burns, but not the usage of Luna, right? Not the strength of the project. We've had a lot of, I wouldn't say fake, but very weak projects where they have burned, but there's no utility and there's no one buying. So the
And if
burn
you
is
also have
kind
a
of,
quadrillion of them and you're not burning much, you're not really doing that much damage. I mean, really, like you said something about staking earlier, and how it shouldn't be really considered staking if you can just pull it out. If you can't leave
absolutely.
it there, staking should recognize that, risk of leaving it there for a amount of time. And I think that, some of these coins, when they say that they burn, there should be some sort of threshold of, some sort of percentage that they have to burn in order to say that they are burning tokens.
Well, I can tell you
And
Luna,
especially when they start to say things like they're deflationary, the way Luna is. When you start to say deflationary, you start to throw the investors into thinking that you're something that's similar to Luna or even ETH, when, you know like I said, if you're deflating from a quadrillion, we got a long way to go.
Luna's burned 20% of its supply. and,
Right.
and there's yeah, and Luna's burning every day. So if you think about the 4-year plan that those guys have, they're not looking at doing a 2x. They're not looking at a 3x. They're not looking at a 4x. They're looking at, and again, they're looking at something much bigger. So again, that should give you hope. These guys are very wealthy people. To buy that amount, you you're a very wealthy person, and you've made good decisions in the past. And so I just wanted to throw that out there for our viewers. Again,
And
um,
look at the amount of time that they're staking it. I think that's important too, because that's a
mhm.
timeline that a lot of people will point to as that 4-year timeline in crypto is a money making timeline. Anybody who's been in crypto, you hear a lot of the YouTubers say it, anybody who's been in for 4 years is buying a new house now, or buying a new car, or whatever. They've all made a ton of money. And
Mhm.
so I think that coincides a little bit with the idea that there are these waves and there are these halvings and there is that time cycle. And that's a reminder for our viewers that time in the market is a lot better than, and a lot more profitable than timing the market.
remember
You
remember
know,
one of the first things we said in one of the first shows, it's sometimes not what you buy, it's when you buy it.
right.
Getting VGX right now, pre-debit card, pre-Europe, when BTC is down at between 150 and 165. I saw someone yesterday spent $60,000 on VGX. They posted their buys online. And that person is a multimillionaire. They're a host on Trade the Chain. I'm not a huge fan of their project, to be honest with you, that they have, but they're very wealthy and they've made a good living.
But
And
let's just look at that timeline and say, let's say you bought at the top. Let's say you bought Luna at 100.
Mhm.
Well, if you stayed in Luna for 4 years, What are the chances that you go up above 100, well above 100?
Oh, great. You're
Would
going
you
to be.
say that in 4 years that there'll be at least 200? Not financial advice. You know,
I,
crystal ball. We can't tell what's going to happen, but
I'm willing to make this prediction, and hopefully our show is still going on in 2025. But at some point in 2025, I expect Luna to be well above 500. I really do.
I anticipate
I'm not a mathematician, but I just looking at all the numbers and how the floor is going to keep rising and the burns are going to keep happening, unless the ecosystem and their Terra just collapse. They've got the staking is going to continue. We've got these whales, but I'm thinking more and more people are going to come on board. Um, and now there's a Bitcoin reserve with Luna. I'm thinking like I really love. I just
One
it's going to be one of those
thing that
where
I will be looking for is February 2026. I might in early February I might sell off a bunch, because when that Luna becomes unstakeable or unlockable, I would imagine that they're going to move some of that and take profits.
I would hope that
Maybe
I would hope
the
that
calendar ahead 4 years and mark January as maybe profit taking time for Luna.
I would think by then, that we're in a very different stage of crypto. But yeah, absolutely, I would not wait. But that you got a long. If you buy today, you've got a long time to
Yeah,
make
just
that
go
money.
into your phone and skip ahead 4 years, and then just mark like January 31st. Set that alarm.
Let your sell. I don't think the Voyager lets you
Sell
sell.
Luna.
Sell.
Yeah,
Actually, that would be something interesting. You can sell it as price, but you can't sell it a date on Coinbase or Voyager or CRO, Crypto.com or Binance. Who knows if they'll ever offer that feature? But I remain super bullish. We were all disappointed again when we had our draft in December. We were thinking that things were going to be headed back up, and they haven't been.
and quite frankly,
And
I was wrong. I was wrong about Putin. I thought he was posturing, and this. I mean, really, when you look at it, and I hope nobody gets hurt. I hope nobody dies. And when you look at it, it's not much of an invasion. It's
not yet, but I do fear that.
But they are
When
surrounded. Like when you look at the Ukraine, you see that horseshoe of Russia that goes all the way around to Crimea, and when you look at those maps that show the troops and where they're lined up, you understand the perilous situation that the Ukraine is in. And the Ukraine, not for nothing, the Ukraine, there are Bitcoin miners in the Ukraine. And to me, that might have been, with all the hooting and hollering that Putin has been doing about Bitcoin, and that being the way that they're going to avoid sanctions, that to me in the back of my mind was, what if he's doing this in some way, shape, or form to try and take control of some of those miners?
You never know. Any type of war obviously is horrible. You feel bad for the people, and it's just related to what we're doing to bring it back. It's not good for the market. And again, all these factors are causing BTC to go down. But like we said, I at some point we might not have a parabolic run again till the next halving, but at some point we're going to get some type of pump. Can't tell you if it's going to get to 50. Can't tell you if it's going to get to 60. 70 might be difficult, although I'm not completely ruling it out. And I do think these alts are going to run a little bit. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of here's the thing we want to tell the viewers. If you truly believe that this is a bear market, layering in the projects is the way to go. Timing the bottom is going to be impossible. It's very likely Luna might not get below 50 again. We might already have seen the Luna bottom. So that's just one example. You might say, if you are an ADA believer, it might not get down to 50 cents. Maybe 80 to 75 cents is the low for the foreseeable future.
The lowest I thought ADA was going to get was 88 cents. I was surprised it broke through that level. It was pretty insane.
Something like VeChain, you might be waiting for get down to a cent. It might only get down to 4. It might only get down to 3.5. So if you do believe that this is a bear, unless you believe the crypto market is never recovering, you're going to probably want to start layering in during 2022, early and late into 2023 over the next year and a half. You're not going to be able to wait. If you go back and look, you can't just say, oh, it's 2024. Let me put all my money in now. Likely the coins have already started to go up. So even if you do think this is a bear, it doesn't look like projection-wise it's going to be a long bear. And we're already seeing some low prices. You talked about how some projects are so strong. You're not going to see AVAX go down to 10 likely again. We're not going to see, we're definitely not going to see a $5 Luna. Okay. You're not going to see, as bad as VGX has gotten, the debit card is coming out soon. You're not going to see VGX go back to 25 cents. So
do you know how much VGX I would buy?
If you do believe in crypto, and let's say you do think we're in a bear market right now, which I'm open to. I don't think it's going to be a traditional bear at all. But if you do think that this is a bear, then guess what? You should be excited about getting these prices layering. Because if this is the bottom, my goodness, what is the top? If Luna's trying to get to 60 and we're in a bear, where's Luna going to be in 2024, 2025? If AVAX can't even be pushed back to 60 again, where is that going to be in 2 to 3 years? So I look at this and I feel like, well,
where's Eagle going to be in 2 to 3 years?
Where's
with a $4 billion market cap?
Yeah, so I look at this and there's a lot of FUD, but we're here to tell you USDC is available, BTC is available. Not just Voyager. There is an exchange where you can get a Bitcoin credit card where you get Bitcoin back on your purchases. So Blockfolio. So there's many ways right now. And NFTs, we talked about the Cleveland Cavaliers. I expect by next year, all the sports teams will have some type of NFT platform. Everyone's looking to get NFTs. So I remain very bullish.
Let's tell those viewers about those horror stories of people who have sold. I mean, we heard one this week about somebody who made a bunch of profits from Bitcoin, quit her job to stay home and continue, working in crypto, and then panic sold in this last dump and lost somewhere in the neighborhood of 24,000 just in Bitcoin. And then it turned around and it came back. And so now when you start to factor that kind of stuff in, you don't even factor in just the loss. Now what you lose on the way back up by not staying in. You know what I mean? Like you sold down here. Now you've missed out on all this too. It boggles my mind where people can do all this research and feel really good about what they're researching. And then that emotion of investing takes over and they'll just, make that knee jerk decision. And that's what we were talking about, is that it was good that we sort of had, a group of people that we talk to. You have not just us at work, but you also have, people in your family, I have people in my family, people, we have friends, Meg has friends that are into crypto. And so we have that sort of support system of people that are there to say, oh, it's cool. It's a little bit down right now, but remember, you're here early. You're here before 90% of the rest of the world is here. And so just be patient. Just, settle your stomach, steel your stomach, build those diamond crusted hands, and wait for that next pump because it's around the corner.
And I'll leave our viewers with this. Sometimes it's good not to look at your portfolio for a day. Especially if you're not going to buy, if you're not going to buy anything and you're likely not going to sell, this is a horrible time to sell. Really, I think this is in January, mid-January was one thing, but now unless you're still ahead on some projects and you want to get out, I guess. But for me, this is a horrible time to sell anything because you're selling at the low. This is the time to buy, not to sell, unless you absolutely need the money for your
own, unless you life situation.
There are situations where people need the money. That's completely different. But if this is in fact money that you've put aside to invest, then it just doesn't make sense to sell because those losses now become real. If you're down 20% on a coin, you're not really down 20% until you sell that coin, right? Because that 20% loss can become 100% gain in a year and a half or
Right.
much sooner. Much sooner, maybe we do get a pump in the next few months. I'm really not ruling it out. In fact, I'm going to be shocked if we stay under 40K. I told you off this show, and I even see 50K this year at some point where we have some type of movement from the alts. I just can't lie to reviewers and tell you exactly when. But my point is, step away, remain patient, and just take the emotion out of it. And we did that beautifully over the summer. I know. There were days where I just looked at it once or twice, set it aside, and if I wasn't DCAing, I wouldn't worry about it. And guess what? End of July, after 3.5 months, we started
Yeah.
going back up. It was a great feeling, and at some point we're going to have that feeling again. We can't tell you it's next week. We can't tell you in April. We can't tell you it's May. We honestly can't even tell you if it's going to be 2022. I do think we're going to have that feeling at some point this year. I really do. But we're just going to have to wait and be patient. Anything you want to leave our viewers with tonight?
No, you mentioned the summer, that summer dip when we got all the way down to 29 at one point and then exploded in July. But I think that's a great point, because we learned a lot, to kind of bring it full circle on the show back to the beginning. We learned a lot during that summer lull. We learned what we didn't want to invest in ever again. We learned what projects were on the way up. We learned, what big caps likely weren't going to grow too much anymore. We learned, how to DCA and when were the best times during the week or the month, or, what to, I was looking at the times of night to DCA. You wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning because the market was usually down at certain times. And so you learn a ton during these times, and just kind of embrace that discomfort, and just know that on the other end of that discomfort is going to be a lot of growth, and a lot of growth in your portfolio as well, not just your knowledge.
Yeah. And we're coming up with another show, and we might talk about things to start layering in on. Things that right now, and some of them is stuff we've talked about before, but there are a couple coins that I've never mentioned. I'm looking at right now and be like, oh, I'm I'm already kind of spent where I'm spent. But if I had a fresh amount of money, and I would slowly layer myself in, if I really believed that we were in a down market for a while, we'll talk about that tomorrow, because
Well,
I
don't
do think
tease them, BitBoy. At least give them some names there.
I, we just talked about this one, but we talked about this one recently. But right now, I look at something like sushi, and I say to myself, it's barely holding over 3.
Yeah, I'm
Engine.
not saying to go too far into it, but just give them some names so that they get.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll give you one right
taste
now. The one we've never talked about, that's market cap is well below $1 billion at 546. Live Peer a few months ago was at 100. Right now it's at 21. Okay, it's a very undervalued, under talked about token, and that would be something we'll talk about it a little more in the future, possibly this week, that I would look to maybe get a little exposure to. I'm just, I don't want to give our, I give our pool, but
for me, I saw one this week that kind of piqued my interest. I was staking StormX, and I moved it to my Trust wallet, and then I connected my Trust wallet to the StormX app. It was actually kind of easy. In the end, I thought it was going to be much harder than that, but it was actually kind of easy. But during that process, I noticed the name QuantStamp as the the verifier of the transaction, and that piqued my interest, because I think that's going to be important. I don't know if QuantStamp will make it or they'll be absorbed by somebody else, but it's at least something that I'm going to look into, because I think transaction verification and transaction security is going to be important.
Yeah, something like Flow again. We said we're going to get off the air, but I'm too excited now. Flow was one point at 44. NFL hasn't come out. MMA hasn't come out in terms of their NFTs. Dapper Labs, they're now pushing almost below 5 now. So what I see here is opportunity, and a lot of our viewers haven't gone in, possibly. And so layering in slowly at these prices, eventually you're going to win. And if you stick with us, you will be very happy. That's all I'm going to say. We're not financial advisors, but I think I'm going to stick by this. Our knowledge is very valuable. I
And
truly
we
believe
keep
that.
our ears to the ground. We know what's going on in the crypto market.
Yeah,
We're
we'll keep you
talking
guys
about
updated. We'll talk about layering in more in the next day or so. Mr. FOMO, this is AZ Crypto. Have a great night, everybody.
See ya.